Hi there, good morning everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, The Future of Integrated Digital Marketing in 2016 and Beyond. Without further ado, please let me introduce to you Dr. Dave Chaffey from Smart Insights and an expert in digital marketing. Over to you, Dave.
Thanks very much, Lizzie, and hello, warm welcome to everyone. Now, one of the key words that Lizzie mentioned there is integration. I didn't quite have room for it in the title here, but I think we should never think about how we plan and manage digital marketing without thinking of integration. And when we survey our members, and some of the polls we'll look at in today, you'll see that it's one of the biggest challenges that people have. But we do need to focus on digital marketing because it's changing so fast, and that's what I'm looking forward to taking you through in the webinar today. So I think why it's important to review innovation and trends is that if you're not very careful, there's just so much to manage in the day job that you can be swamped just with business as usual and without taking a long-term strategic view to create a roadmap. Now, this is effectively, you see here, a retrospective roadmap of what Dell has been working on, in particular in their social media. And they're an example of a leader where they're constantly looking at new trends, new opportunities, and how they can exploit them. So, just to call out some of them, you may remember their idea storm, where they were getting feedback online from audiences with regards to new products, and then feeding back on which of those ideas they will implement. And that's very possible now for a lot of businesses to implement, but in fact in B2B you don't actually see that used so much. You can see there as well the direct to Dell channel and their use of in 2008 they were restructuring the organization for success. So I'd say that one of the big trends that we will see this year and beyond is this focus on digital transformation, because there are just so many potential opportunities to take advantage of, and they do require quite often structural changes in an organization. You have to develop the right skills, deploy the right technology. So really it's people, process, and planning. So we've just done some research recently with UBM, the Technology for Marketing event, and we've seen that around a third of businesses are actually working this year on digital transformation. Around a quarter have already kicked off a program, and that's in place. But if you don't do that, I think there's a real danger you will be a follower and you'll fall behind. So before we look at the trends, and I'm going to focus on 5 trends, but drill down into some of the details of those, because I think it's the detail that's important to get to take advantage. Just a very quick intro here. So I've been fortunate enough to specialise in integrated digital marketing for a long time, and if you actually look at the digital marketing book there, we're now on the 6th edition. What we've always done is to look at how you can align digital marketing with traditional marketing. So we look, for example, in there at segmentation, targeting, positioning, developing integrated communications strategies, and that's what we've continued to do in our planning resources on Smart Insights, our templates such as the digital marketing workbook there and the B2B guide. It's very much about how you integrate digital. Now, I mentioned we'll be drilling down into some of the details, and you can see from some of my LinkedIn endorsements, I've been it's been nice to be regarded as a get those endorsements for digital strategy, marketing strategy, but also get the kudos for things like social media, Google Analytics, SEO, email marketing, and we'll be talking about all of those today. Conversion rate optimization. We'll cover not so much time on the analytics, marketing automation as well. So a lot to cover. Let's get into it. So where we're going to focus in particular is not so much trends that are interesting. There's a lot of chat about bots, marketing bots, and how they're going to be important in the future. But I think the reality is they're not going to give much impact to businesses like yours, whoever you work for. But we will touch on those because they are interesting, I think, even if it's just to debunk the hype. So we'll look at these 5 different trends at a top level, and then we'll drill down within those to look at some specific techniques and some examples of what B2B brands are doing now. And yeah, look at some of the tools that are available. I think it's one of the great things of working in marketing today that there are a lot of free and low cost tools that you can use to get an edge on your competitors and really mine the insights you see as you review the way your interactions with your prospects and customers. So we'll look at that. But to kick off, I'd like to start with a poll just to really get your view on what's important in business-to-business marketing. So if you could choose just one of these, which is going to give you the biggest uplift, you think, this year, if you've got a project or an initiative working on one of these.
Big data, including market and customer insight, there's 19% chosen that answer there. 28%
Cool.
content marketing. 26% for conversion rate optimization and improving website experiences. 16% for marketing automation, and 12% for social media marketing. So a mix there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, there's a nice range there. So thanks for voting, everyone. Interesting that big data. There's a lot of hype on that, and yet it's quite popular. I think it's this desire to mine customer insight and predictive analytics, and we'll look at some examples actually of what Smart Insights has been doing there. As we're B2B marketers, of course, it's no real surprise to see content marketing so high. I'm a little surprised that that marketing automation isn't higher, because we've actually done some research recently when we're partnering with HubSpot, the marketing automation provider, and you can see there we've got similar answers to what you've just given there. We asked about more activities. We just chose the top 5 for yourselves, but you can see it's quite a similar pattern. So we'll actually be covering all of those top 5, looking at examples of those, and including social media as well. Now, I mentioned the marketing bots. In 2016 in particular, there's been a lot of hype about this because there was a particular episode where Microsoft introduced a bot, and it hit the media because it was a chat bot, but it had this character developed, and it turned out it was a neo-Nazi bot, so not really what Microsoft would have wanted there. And I think it shows the dangers, perhaps, where you use technology rather than humans to answer questions. But here we have MIT talking about how different social media sites in particular are using this, and we've seen Facebook using bots within their Messenger. Just this week, we've seen Google at their Google I/O conference announcing their Assistant, which is again a messaging bot. So it'll be interesting to see whether there are actual business applications that come through. You know, maybe for, I think a nice application would be within using analytics or predictive analytics, where you can ask questions about what the data is showing you in a natural language sense. So show me all of the segments which we're underutilizing in terms of our targeting at the moment. And it might, in the case of Smart Insights, it might come back and say, well, you're not sending specific personalized messages to agency owners, but actually there's quite a big group of those. That's actually something we've found through our mining our own data, that agency owners in particular are important subscribers. I think the other use of bots is actually around automating tasks. So it's a bit like if then that, and it's more around automating tasks. So it's part of marketing automation, which we'll talk of in a moment. The other brand or platform that's using bots and AI a lot is Google. And one of the trends, it was actually from last autumn, you may have seen is rank brain. And what you may not know is that I think it's around 20 or 25% of Google's queries are now based on using artificial intelligence to try and glean the meaning from the searches for the intent. So I think one thing that you should be looking at in your SEO strategy, or the details of your SEO, is how you can answer natural language queries as people are asking them. And that goes back also to the Google Hummingbird algorithm from a while back. So one thing that you can do is to look within your audience the type of questions they're asking or themes that they're interested in, and to see whether you can serve what Google called quick answers. There's two forms of these. One I've got on screen here is just a snippet where it will do a summary, and it will often position that high in the search results. So I was talking on Monday about the SOSTAT planning framework from PR Smith that he's contributed to Smart Insights as well, and you can see we've got that box at the top explaining it with a graphic, and that gives us a much more cut through in the search results if someone's interested in that. What you'll also see sometimes is some grey boxes where there are 3 or 4 different answers to questions. So it will say something like, people who ask about this also ask about the other different types of queries. So that's Google applying some predictive analytics. And if you can get in that in those slots, that's obviously going to help drive traffic and position you as a thought leader to some extent as well. Now, I've been looking at B2B marketing, how people are using this move to more natural language queries, and I saw this on ClickSee, the publisher, the global search marketing at SAP. He's been looking at this, and for their persona, if you had someone in a large organization who was interested in investing in marketing automation or CRM, what are the type of searches they would serve. So if you look at the example we've got on the right, where someone saying, well, for a large organization like mine, what should I be really looking for in enterprise CRM? You know, what's out there? And you can see that there are, Google has, the first search it's returned is very much about that topic, but for some of the other queries there, they're actually just about small business CRM. So Google hasn't quite got it right, but certainly if you were a vendor of a CRM system, that's you know, that's a good place to be. But no one none of the vendors actually are positioned there. They're in the AdWords results at the top, of course. And I think AdWords is an example of where it's important to be on top of the latest changes, because of course just back last month Google changed AdWords so that we no longer have the ads in the right sidebar, and it's just down to the top 3 positions in the search results page. Now, the guy from SAP didn't actually look at marketing automation. Here I actually swapped out the terms, and you can see Google isn't really that clever here, because it's not managed to serve me any results about enterprise marketing or automation. But maybe people aren't actually asking that question, so they're not thinking like the customer does. Maybe that's the issue there. And certainly at Smart Insights, we work really hard to, we've got what we call a gap analysis spreadsheet that we make available for our expert members, which looks at the Google search console, and we can see exactly the search terms coming through to Smart Insights, and we try to build on those, because the reality is you probably get 80% of your search traffic in natural search from the top 20 posts. It's a version of the 80-20 rule. So we really work hard to take our existing search that's working well and improve on that. In fact, just this week, Google have announced that they're improving the integration of Google Search Console with Google Analytics, so you can see the keywords and whether they're converting now. Yeah, when I'm doing training, like I was doing some training on SEO this week, I found the company, like many, don't actually have that insight within the company. They think it's all blanked out in the not provided. So again, the details matter to drive performance. So we'll spend the next half an hour or so looking at the 5 trends that we looked at in the poll, in the order of popularity, really. So content marketing is still a massive trend, and it was good that in Digital Week we had Joe Palizzi of the Content Marketing Institute. Many call him the godfather of content marketing, really originated the area. He was talking, so do check out the recording of his talk, or check out CMI if you don't know that. Now, Smart Insights, we focus a lot on content marketing as well, and we've produced guides, particularly on strategy and planning, and then done some joint resource with HubSpot to look at how the content marketing is used within Europe. And you can see the real challenge here, as you would expect, is more and more people are devoting more resource, both in terms of in-house hires, agency input to create more content. And what we're actually, the trend here is that we're hitting this, what Mark Schaefer of Grow calls content shock. So really, you're missing out on the ability to get cut through. And many sort of Me Too posts, they just aren't getting the shares or the links back that the theory of content marketing would show. So I think my advice here is that you really have to look at this less is more, develop a strategy where you really understand what resonates with the audience, and then seek to be the very best you can within your sector of B2B. So maybe rather than trying to do, let's say, 2 blog posts a week, you reduce that down to 1 blog post every other week, but you just make it one of the best resources that's available. And I've seen that work again and again, because the research shows in Google that most of the first page results are actually more than 2,000 words long. And if you look at someone like Avinash Kaushik, the Google evangelist on digital marketing, he actually only blogs once a month, but he does that sort of long form content that works really well. So long form content is definitely a trend if you want to get this this cut through in content marketing. But do download our resource from HubSpot if you want to learn more. So I talked about a more strategic approach to content marketing. Part of that is the type of content that you produce, and I'd recommend here doing a content mapping, so you really work out the gap between the content you're producing now and what your competitors are producing. So look at that from left to right, matrix from awareness to purchase, map out what you have, map out what the competitors have, and also look at the different styles of content from the more emotional to rational. When I run this activity in workshops with B2B clients and members on Smart Insights, we find that often a lot of the B2B content is dull, to put it bluntly. So it's in that bottom left sector, whereas often you need to push boundaries, I think, and to stand out, you need to be a bit more creative, of course. So have a go at that technique. And I'd have to say that this content marketing matrix, this is an example of Smart Insights trying to do the less is more thing. We may only produce 3 or 4 new infographics a year, but they're very different from the normal fare of just looking at stats and trends, and do they just produce quite quickly? We might invest thousands to produce one infographic, and then the shares we see will be reflected in that. So one of the other techniques, the formats we can see on those interactive tools. I'm going to make an example of that in a moment. The other trend, I would say, that we saw in this HubSpot report is more people are working on influencer outreach and paid social promotion as well. So featuring your assets in LinkedIn, but also in Twitter and Facebook potentially. And I'll be asking at the end of the webinar today which of those techniques work particularly well for you. Now, what I've personally found is that influencer outreach doesn't work that well unless you develop really deep relationships with other individuals, or perhaps more to the point, publishers. I think, you know, we at Smart Insights, we could spend a lot of time getting to know Joe Pulizzi, and we have done that, and we've actually written on his site. But if he shares some of our content, the reality is it will just be a quick spike in our social media or on our blog. We may get 50 or 100 new visits, but so what when we're getting 500,000 visits every week, every month. What I think is much more important is to do long-term partnerships. So we've actually been working with HubSpot and with agencies like Successflow as well, where we'll work on a more strategic level to develop joint reports, to do webinars, to regularly blog on their site. So I've developed a relationship as well with, rather than an individual, with the Adobe site cmo.com, because that fits the audience we're looking to reach, and I'm now writing for them on a monthly basis. So I think it's those strategic relationships rather than working with individuals. It's more complementary publishers, I think, which will work the best. You may have to pay for that, of course, but that's certainly the approach we use. So another trend within content marketing, this is actually from Scott Brinker. You may know him as at Chief Martech on Twitter. And what he's talked about is the growth in from, you know, everyone used to do blog posts back in the day. We've talked about the richer content like infographics, but these days it's marketing apps and more personalization on site. And I think there's a huge opportunity here within B2B marketing that's really been missed, because if you look at the retail sector, a lot of you know, every retailer will be looking to personalize products based on previous visits, which categories someone has been browsing, and that's widely adopted. But within business to business, it isn't used as widely, and I'll show you some examples in a moment of how you can do that. And then at the top of the sophistication pile here, we've got marketing apps, and that's something Smart Insights have been investing a lot in. So this is what we've been doing, and this is actually something that you can try out within the members area. So it's available freely for all of our basic members, but our expert members get to go back and they can actually see past scores, and they can link through to the specific recommendations to improve in our e-learning. So let me give you the background on this. What we used to do on Smart Insights is we had some capability benchmark papers. We've still got these actually. They're quite nice visuals which allow you to score yourself on 1 to 5, whether it's your strategy as a whole, or your SEO, or your content marketing. And they were successful in the sense that they were getting hundreds of downloads per month, and we knew that we could use that with our lead scoring. Someone who's engaged that report is obviously interested in a more strategic view than someone who's just reading individual blog posts. But what we weren't able to see really within there is the level of interaction. Once someone's downloaded a white paper, you don't know anything more about them. By building our own interactive app, we're able to collect data, see what individuals are doing, and then actually report back on that data to add value to our members. So one of the things that you can see here is that for planning digital marketing, we were quite shocked by this really, that many of the audience are at a much earlier stage than we thought. So they just rated themselves at 1 or 2 out of 5 when they were scoring just by clicking one of the boxes you can see on the right here. So it shows that I mean, this is maybe reassuring for you if you're thinking, well, there's so much to do, we're at an early stage. A lot of organizations are in that situation as well. Kudos to the ones who scored themselves 3, 4, and 5. You know, those will be the sector leading businesses that you should seek to learn from. Depending on your size, you may not need to get to more than level 3, because level 4 and 5 really need a big resource base and a big commitment to digital marketing. But do check out our interactive tool. We've certainly found it's helped us deliver more tailored content and explain our proposition better. Here's another approach from a non-marketing site, so a biotech site in this case. So what they've done really, it's just thinking about the design of their site and including it's really native content, native advertising within their own sites. So they decide the page template so they can feature their interactive tools here, or they can serve individual research spotlights based on what individuals, the content they've reviewed or what's in their profile. And I like the way they've got this by tools or resources. I think many B2B organizations make the mistake because they're not quite strategic enough. They do have white papers on individual landing pages that are used to get drive engagement, lead generation, and lead follow-up, but they don't provide a central resource which is easy to access. And I think part of the blame here, if I'm apportioning blame, is down to the marketing automation vendors, because they don't provide, their tools are all around individual resources rather than presenting a series of resources in an integrated way. So when I talk about integrated digital marketing, a big part of it is thinking about the customer journey for an individual persona, and what is the series of resources you want to deliver to them, both through web personalization and sending out emails as part of a nurture sequence as well. But certainly we try to use a similar approach within Smart Insights, and if someone is, say, an agency owner or they're a marketing manager, we will serve different content for them, and we've just done that in quite a sort of low-tech way through coding it up without a marketing automation system. If you don't want to have that development expense, there are a number of plugins that are now available, and you could use these, say, on a blog, and they vary quite a lot in sophistication. We had Bright Info talking earlier in the week about their tool. That's doesn't need a big IT investment, and it's the same with Evergage. It's prompted by JavaScript, so it will prompt automatically based on content that has been consumed. IDEO and Kissmetrics, they're more high-scale services, but essentially they're a similar rules-based approach where it's similar to the Amazon recommendations that you'll see. So people of a particular profile, a particular industry size, are more likely to like a particular type of content there. So that's our first trend, moving swiftly on to marketing automation. And really there you can see in the previous section I've been talking about using our marketing automation for serving personalized content within B2B. So we're touching on this already. But that's the theory. What I'd like to know from yourselves is, there's been a lot of hype about marketing automation, but are you actually taking advantage of some of the technologies and techniques that are out there? Because they're not new. So if you could vote now, it'd be really interesting to see how you're doing. 5.
Okay, so 55% are currently not using automation.
Cool.
23% are at basic, so not using many features of automation. We have 12% for moderate to intermediate, 9% for good, and 1% for high.
Right. Okay, fantastic. So again, real spread, but definitely more at the very early stages. So yeah, kudos if you are at 3, 4, or 5. So I think it's really interesting to say, well, why is everyone at quite an early stage? And I think well, one thing that's quite clear, technology, it's not just a case of purchasing the technology and you're immediately at step 4 or 5. You have to have a long-term program of actually developing the techniques, and so using consultants or agencies or your internal specialists to map out the content through the customer journey, how you're going to do the personalization, send out the emails to nurture the audience. That doesn't come out of the box. You have to customize it, configure it for your organization. So in some sense, I think it's quite sad to hear that the promise of marketing automation and this digital body language hasn't been delivered. But do take a look at our marketing automation guides on Smart Insights and our spreadsheets for doing that sort of content mapping, because the idea of those is that they will help you identify how to create that. So take a look in our B2B toolkit. If you are at stage 0 or 1, where I would recommend starting is just thinking about your welcome sequence and how you can try to personalize that, or perhaps send a series of emails after someone registers for your site rather than just a one-off simple plain text email. So think about the level of segmentation you're doing. This tells a similar story. This was some research we were doing with Communicator, another a B2B marketing provider, and many people aren't going beyond just those simple segments, but hey, they're a great place to start if you're not doing any targeting at all. So you can't do everything at once. Once you get a marketing automation tool in place, it could take you a month. Rather than a month, it could take you a year or even 18 months to develop these sort of very detailed triggered-based messages based on what people are browsing on the site, which emails they're responding to, and their profile. So it's really about setting expectations, I think, with colleagues, saying it's not a quick fix. It's about a strategic initiative where you're going to be rolling out a series of features. And you might start with those simple welcome emails, but then develop more through time. So this is the type of, this is a B2B example again of the type of messages you can send, and here they're specifically developed in terms of the copy and the content as people are moving through the decision process. In this case, it's a compliance, it's a sort of legal provider, very jargon rich. I won't attempt to explain it, but the clock is ticking. They're using that sort of emotional trigger within their subject line there to move someone along. So I like the way the creative there is actually nurturing. That's why I chose the example. So I said, where do I start? Which is one of the most common questions we saw actually when we asked before sign up for this webinar. So one thing that you can do quite simply is you can use dynamic content to drop in the name of your audience or a particular sector. So we've said here, this is our advice to help marketing managers, and for them it's important to do an audit. That will appeal to someone at that level in the organization. And through doing that, you can see we significantly boosted our open and click rates depending on the type of audience. Before it was one size fits all, thanks for joining and here's some content. So look at the welcome sequence in the start, and then decide on your perhaps 3 or 4 key segments. And then think about the timing as well. And within business to business, of course, doing a phone follow-up for your hottest leads when you're qualifying them can have a dramatic impact. Now, this is actually consumer data from Optalead, but it shows that conversion rate is dramatically higher in the first 30 minutes after someone has interacted with you online. And I've seen similar data for B2B from Serious Decisions, I think it was, as well. And this is again the beauty of marketing automation. We can quickly see whether someone does have that level of intent and then follow up with a call. Now, the example I showed from Smart Insights was quite a simple example. Here it's a more complex one, more suited for a large international organization when they're actually mapping out for their newsletter the different types of dynamic content they can drop in each week of the month. So they might just have, say, 2-3 people in their CRM team, but they're able to send out literally millions of emails worldwide, which are tailored according to context. So the way they do that, I think this company uses Responses for their targeting, and you can see they drop in content according to CLC's customer lifecycle, the profile. If they're a design engineer, they're dropping in content at the top there because that's where it's most important to resonate, and then also behavioral content as well. That's that BEH where someone has browsed a category but not brought. Now this is for a transactional e-com business clearly, but I think you can apply very similar thinking even if you're not selling online. Someone has browsed a particular category of content, and then you should be able to serve relevant white papers or insights to them to help them do their job. I'll skip over this. This is just another example within Smart Insights of our sort of high-scale content marketing where we'll invest a lot to produce something that will really be widely shared, and I think we've had several thousand downloads of this since we released this last month. If you're reviewing your tool base, it's kind of scary because it shows there are so many tools available, but I really believe that if you want to succeed in digital marketing, you do need to look at across the customer life cycle, which is what this shows. You do have to look at your tool set and decide whether you have integrated tools that cover several of these bases, like the marketing automation platforms there you can see in 28 and 29, or whether you go for best of breed and try to use those tools. So this is actually a free download as well. We explain why we've chosen the particular tools in these categories. So it's certainly a trend is that we'll see some consolidation of these tools, but we'll also see some of them, like the category of conversion rate optimization, that I'll talk about more in a moment, that will increase. So I hope that's interesting, if not a little daunting. Another area in B2B that I'm interested to see how technology supports it is account-based marketing, whereas rather than marketing to the individual, you're looking at the whole buying group, buying unit, particularly in larger organizations, and then you're seeing how you can use email retargeting through display ads or through the Google Display Network to reach more people, because there is this research from Serious Decisions and others that shows that now sales are involved much later in the funnel, and it's down to the marketers to convince and persuade about the best solutions before your prospects have even talked to a salesperson. So I think this is going to be really important, but I don't think a lot of the marketing automation vendors are supporting it that well yet. I think Marketo are one of the early adopters, but more of them will be moving into this area of account-based marketing. So I've just got 5 or 10 minutes or so to finish the last 3 trends. They are actually shorter. I wanted to spend more time on the first 2, so I'll speed through these fairly rapidly. Got a couple of polls here though that show the value of this conversion rate optimization, where in business to business it's serving different pages, either the home page or a category page or a white paper landing page. So let's have a look at what you think would work best here. This is just a simple yes/no answer. So do you think which would produce the highest level of leads? Would it be page A or page B? This is taken from the site Which Test One, by the way, which is a nice site for justifying to others why you should get this type of conversion rate software in place.
Okay, so we have 74% going for option B, so the short form, and 26% for long form.
Okay, I thought that would be the case. And if you chose B, congratulations, you're quite right. That simplified, much more visually engaging approach worked best. So the results there really show the value of doing this sort of test. So if we could pop another poll straight away here. So I guess the results are coming in. Now, I'm not expecting so many people to be right on this one, because that's the thing, you can't second guess your audience. As a marketer, you'll have good experience or you'll know what you like, but across your whole audience, it can be difficult to judge.
A close one here. So 55% for option B, the short form, and 45% for option A, long form.
Okay, so yeah, that was closer. If you chose A in this case, you'd be right. And I think this test was around a mobile responsive design where you can see there that they've made that move. And in this case, a longer page works better. We first certainly found with Smart Insights, you may have noticed that we use a lot of very long form persuasion pages now, sales letters you could call them. And they do actually work significantly better than the simpler option. We're all told we should simplify copy, but with a complex B2B sale and when we're competing against free content effectively, we've really found you need to layer on the proof points, you need to put more testimonials on there, and then you will see the higher uplift. Even if I don't personally like the level of detail, but it's worked a lot better for us than the older, simpler version. Just to manage the expectations here, this is actually a consumer example from Shop Direct, but it shows how they're really ramping up testing, and you won't necessarily get a great result. And we've seen this as well. A lot of our tests have failed, or they haven't really had a huge impact. So you do need to run a lot of experiments to really get the best results. So you shouldn't, they're not a silver bullet. You have to work really hard to develop quite different content from what you have already. It's a big investment in web design. It's not, for me, it's not about changing button color or call to action. It's about developing completely new types of content and layouts for the website. Having said that, this is one quick test we did on Smart Insights, and we use convert.com, which is a great value way of doing this sort of initiative. From our members, and you can see we just added those three at the bottom there. We just added those three opinions to the pop-up, and that actually increased conversion by a further 10%. So increasing leads by 10% through a change like that is fantastic, and we were able to run that test just within a week back last December. Very quickly on big data, I'd have to say this is a case of the Emperor's New Clothes, and David Raab's been doing research on this, which shows that although there's all the hype about it and the single customer view and mining that data, it's still really quite rare. So it's early days, and for me, I think as we saw from that earlier poll on marketing automation, it's really small data or getting the basics right. If you do want to read more, here's another expert in this area, and he's saying, I think this is an example of a more practical application of data analysis within B2B, where it's really just looking within your prospect data. Are there particular niches that you can exploit that you're perhaps not targeting through your communications in a way that you could? And we've actually been investing in this as well, this idea of predictive analytics. So we've got a lot of click data coming from the website. We use Kissmetrics to see which resources people are interested. Are they doing our interactive tools or the downloads? So we went to an agency called Data Stories, and we did a similar thing to what they've done with Movely here. So we were trying to understand were there particular audiences or people who convert quite fast, perhaps in smaller organizations, and we can encourage that behavior through email or web personalization. And are there larger organizations that convert over a longer period? What sort of follow-up should we do for them? So I think this is a good application of big data within B2B. So finally, we come to social media, and it was interesting to see this was actually the smallest percentage response in terms of uplift, and I'd say that's the case for Smart Insights. We really see data and conversion rate optimization as being most important. Now, LinkedIn is still growing massively, as you can see. What we actually find is that adoption is sort of maxing out in our English language markets and for Europe as well. And a lot of the new people joining are from sort of Asia, which isn't our core market, really. And what we've also seen is that although LinkedIn is growing still quite rapidly, the tools and the organic options are really falling away. I was really quite enthusiastic about LinkedIn introducing remarketing through this Lead Accelerator program that was in early 2015, but they've actually killed off that product, so it's just not an option to do that in the way that you can with Google AdWords. You can do remarketing of where people have been on your sites. You can do customer match where you can upload a prospect list. So yeah, LinkedIn have removed that option. Hopefully new things will come. And I think what I would suggest, and this is what we've seen at Smart Insights, is that potentially Facebook could be introducing, there's rumors of them introducing business-to-business specific services, and Twitter doing the same, and already you can use them for B2B. So as a final poll, I was interested to know whether which one of the social networks is actually driving most leads for you, because for us it's probably now in this order: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, although the quality of leads in LinkedIn is still higher for us. And I personally like to interact with people, with members through LinkedIn.
Okay, so Dave, the results are in. Highest at 40% is Facebook. Next,
okay,
LinkedIn with 38%, so close there. And
very close. Yeah.
Twitter with 22%.
Okay, cool. So that's really interesting. I haven't seen any data that shows Facebook is more important than LinkedIn for B2B, but you heard it here first. Thanks for voting there. That's definitely a trend for 2016 and beyond. So that is actually our final poll. As I said, I'm very keen to connect on interact on LinkedIn myself, or you could follow my updates.
So thank you very much for that presentation there.
Yes, that's great, Lizzie. Well, thanks for managing the polls there and taking us through those, and thanks to SuccessFlow for working with Smart Insights on Digital Week this year.